the process of designing is informed by research. There's a challenge of making sense of it.
It's really easy to design something that you like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it will work well for everyone.
Should Start be left aligned or center aligned? Should there be a search box in Start? Should there be an all apps list?
You know, some people thought the weather was important, but other people wavered on that.
And they were all a little bit different, but one thing that they had in common.
These people don't understand Windows or people that use Windows. And I don't think they care. Was this like a summer intern project or something that you did?
And so that gave us a lot of confidence that we were on the right track in building something that people would really like.
What does it take to make a Windows 11 virtual machine from scratch? So I started, perusing the internet, and believe it or not, I couldn't find much of anything. A lot of people tried doing it on Windows, so like VirtualBox or whatever, but no. We're better than that. We're not going to be using no VirtualBox. We're going to be using virt-manager, the only virtual machine system that anyone should be using, all right? First things first, you're going to need two things. And if you watched the last video, you might have them installed already. When I did this, I actually didn't have to do anything. But if you're on Arch or whatever, Ubuntu or Debian, you're going to have to figure this out for yourself. So I'll just recommend just going through this, all right? So this is the command that I had to use, all right? And this is the command. So it's sudo dnf install edk2 ovmf. Ovmf is actually open source firmware to help virtual machines do secure boot. It's actually good for you in general. Then we also have swtpm. swtpm is for software simulated TPM. Windows 11's stupid requirements require that you have TPM, even though Windows 10 never required it. I mean, you should still have one anyway, but it's still ridiculous that they'll just arbitrarily block you from installing it just because you don't have it. But you're gonna need this, right? Let's say you're on Debian or whatever, right? You need to do sudo apt install. I believe it's just ovmf. Don't ask me why. They don't have an edk2 or whatever. But this command, and if you're on Arch, it's just sudo pacman-s, blah, blah, blah. You'll get it. Same thing, right? Type in the enter, boom, I already have it installed, all right? So make sure you have these things. You're going to need them. Oh, and also, you need to make sure you have a valid Windows 11 CD. Yes, I have a Windows 11 CD. I downloaded right here. I'll leave a link in the description down below for you to download a Windows 11 CD. A reason why I'm trying to push people to use Windows 11 virtual machines and not Windows 10 virtual machines. I know there's people who still cling to using Windows XP or Windows 8 or 7, and it's guys, we need to future-proof our stuff, right? Always keep up with the times, use up-to-date stuff, and preferably use the most up-to-date thing you possibly can. I know Windows 11 has problems. I'm not telling you, if you have a Windows 10 machine, you should upgrade. I'm not saying that. You probably shouldn't. I'm just saying that if you want to future-proof your stuff, while the workarounds still work, install Windows 11 now so you're ready for the future. Microsoft might kick you out later. And then we'll do the rest of this in the graphical interface. So first things first, like what we learned in the last video, click the plus icon. We're going to pick an ISO, right? So, and because I have a big folder for all of this, I'm just going to select ISOs, right? And you'll see here it actually says it's Windows 10. Don't worry about that. It's fine. Click forward. And there's blah, 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 right? And if that's whatever. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign it some RAM. So I actually have a lot of RAM. I actually have 32 gigs of RAM available. So I'm just going to give it 8 gigs of RAM, 2 cores of my CPU. I think that's pretty generous. I think it's pretty good for most things. Especially you need 8 gigs of RAM in particular because this is one of the requirements for Windows 11. Yes, so please, you can if you don't like Microsoft requiring 8 gigs of RAM, you can take it away from them in the future, all right? After all, that's what the purpose of virtual machines is for, right? So click forward. And then, now here's another funny bit in my testing. The Windows 11 requirements stipulate that you need 64 gigs of RAM. If you use a virtual machine like I'm doing, you don't need to do that. It's hilarious. All right, so I'm just going to stick with the default 40 gigs of RAM. You actually need a lot. And I say Windows 10. I'm just going to change this so it says Windows 11. Then we'll click Customize Install. This is important. I recommend you need to do this before proceeding further. So check the box that says Customize Configuration before install. We're going to click Finish. Right? And then we're going to get kicked into this menu. So this menu is actually a graphical interface for your QEMU XML files, right? So if you click on this little XML section here, you'll actually see that each section of your QEMU virtual machine is configured through this massive XML file. Don't worry too much about this because Kimi will actually help you. Through virt-manager's GUI, right? And the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have to enable secure boot, right? The reason why we had to install ovmf, and because it's required by Windows 11's system requirements, we're going to need to enable secure boot, right? So what you do is you see where it says hypervisor details right here, right? What you need to do is you need to click on this part where it says BIOS, click on that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to select here where it says, you'll see a thing right here, it says ovmf code secboot.ft, right? And this is the firmware that's needed for secure boot. So we're going to click on that, right? And then when you're done, click apply, right? Don't worry too much about all this other stuff. You just need to make sure you have secure boot enabled, right? You might honestly have different stuff than I do if you're running like AMD or ARM machines, for example, all right? So the next one is the operating system, CPU cores. I always, again, like in the last video, I always use host. I always copy the host, my own host configuration, just to reduce the chance of error. And then there's memory, which is about what you'd expect. Boot order, about what you'd expect. Fine. Network, I hate Microsoft. We're going to kill the internet. Yes, they don't actually check, but we'll just do it just to be safe. I'll show you some ways around it when we get there. Tablet, I don't use it. I don't need that. Spice server, and then all this other stuff. And then the last part right here, and I recommend doing this, is change video QXL, change this to VirtIO. QXL hasn't been maintained for years. I don't know why Red Hat hasn't maintained it for years, but whatever. So make sure this is selected to VirtIO and then click apply. Then the last thing we're going to need to do, this is the final thing, last thing, we're going to need to go here where it says add hardware, right? And then you'll get a pop-up window that looks like this. It might be look a little overwhelming. But what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to add a TPM, right? So click here where it says TPM, the bottom right here. And then click, and you see where it says emulated TPM, right? Then click finish, right? And then if we click on the TPM here, right? We click on advanced. We want to at least make sure that we are using the right model of TPM, right? Windows 11 requires at least TPM 2.0 or higher, right? So I'm going to make sure this is selected at TPM 2.0. It doesn't matter which TPM model, Microsoft supports all of them. So we're just going to click apply once we've selected all of those, right? So, because remember, this is simulated TPM, right? This is not actually a real TPM, right? So we're just going to click begin installation, right? It's going to boot up the virtual machine. I'm just going to full screen this so you can see what happens. And then you're going to get into a menu that looks a little bit like this. And we're just going to say click OK. Right? And if you want to release the mouse, again, Control-Alt-G, this releases the mouse. And you can see here, you'll see the open source Tiano Core firmware here, which is actually used for secure boot. So now we're at this next part, and this is about what you'd expect from most things, right? And I'm just going to keep the language the same language, time format, keyboard input. That's all fine for me. Make sure it's correct. Hit next. You know, it's like installing Windows like you usually do. You know, it's just Windows 11, nothing crazy. And then you're going to get to a screen that looks a little bit like this, right? Little life pro tip. You don't want to actually pay Microsoft money. What you can do is if you type in the keys that I'm going to type in right now, you don't actually need to pay Microsoft money. And then you can get Windows 10 Pro for free. You can only do this if you don't already have some other version of Windows enrolled in your computer. I just do this because the benefit of this is if you enter in this key, I'll just paste it in the description. If you actually want to take advantage of this key, you can get things like Group Policy Editor and stuff, which is, in my mind, an absolute essential on Windows. And then I agree to sell over my firstborn child to Bill Gates. And then we're going to get to this screen right here, right? We're going to click Install Windows. It says, warning, to install this version of Windows, it needs to be 52 gigabytes or larger. They're lying to you. It actually doesn't. They actually will not stop you at this point. So you click Next. Give it a moment. And you can see it's getting ready for installation here. So what's going to happen is your computer is going to reboot, you know, a million times because this is Windows, and installing Windows is like pulling teeth. All right, so here I have country. Live in the US. Here I have the country. Live in the US, yeah. Click next. Is this the right keyboard? Yes. No. Riveting gameplay, I know. Ah, here we go. Let's connect you to the interwebs, alright? With the virtual machine, for some reason, they don't require this. I don't know why, right? So we're gonna click, I have no internet. Yeah, because I have no internet. And it's like, oh, but you can connect your device and let us spy on you. No. Okay, we're loading, loading, loading. Alright, what is your name? My name is user. Alright, next. Alright, password. Pro life tip, kids. In Windows, if you just keep this blank, they just leave you with a blank password. Yes. Microsoft puts you in control of your privacy by giving you meaningless checkboxes which don't do anything. Alright, so we're gonna uncheck all of those boxes and click accept. We're going to click accept so that all we can do is let Panos Panay tell us a story about his family.
But it's not just about this physical space. It's the feeling that I get when I'm there, the people, the connections, the growth.
And then what we're going to need to do first is we're going to need to give our virtual machine internet. All the hard work is done. We're going to give the virtual machine internet, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some hardware, network, and you can just leave the default because this is the default thing. And then boom. Virtual machine will soon get internet. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna need to install some virtual machine. How should I put this? Virtual machine guest editions, right? Now I had to really dig for this, but apparently, due to legal reasons, you're not allowed to. No one's actually allowed to package them because of Microsoft's edict that you swore on your firstborn child for, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to actually download them. So the source of actually downloading these images, right, actually comes from a page. This is a GitHub page. It's called VirtIO Win, right? So what this is packaging for the Red Hat's VirtIO. What this does is they actually package in here the latest releases for VirtIO guest editions, right? And this is the driver that we actually need. All of those other drivers that we saw on that list are useless. They don't do anything. You really want VirtIO, right? And I'll show you why, right? When you go to your virtual machine settings here, right? I'm gonna click. If you click on the eye, you can see, right? If you go to video VirtIO, right? Notice how there's this little checkbox here which says 3D acceleration. This checkbox doesn't exist if you select any of these other options here. And what's really annoying too is like if you built your virtual machine using one of these other ones, nah, sucks to be you. You gotta build it from scratch. But that's why we have stuff like Ansible, right? All right, so we're gonna ignore this for now. And of course, the obvious thing that everyone's gonna ask me is, but man, are you gonna actually open Microsoft Edge analysis? Because I can't copy and paste to I can't copy and paste to this virtual machine like I could with my Linux virtual machines because they don't have the thing pre-installed. So I actually have to go and manually type this, and it's like, so aren't you going to open Edge? And it's like, yeah, you could do that, but I'm not going to open Microsoft Edge. I'm going to show you a way around it, all right? This is more Windows command line lessons, all right? So let me pop over here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do, right? So first thing that I would recommend doing, this is hilarious, and it's to some people out in the world, they're gonna be like, what in the world are you doing? So if you click on this little download link here, and if you just copy it, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys how to actually do this, okay? Believe it or not, did you know Windows has curl pre-installed? Because, why? Of course they do. It's only natural, right? So we're going to do HTTPS. So make sure you have curl, URL, remember, and it's the URL for, and remember, it's the URL for this thing right here, latest win guest tools.exe, and then -o virtio win.exe. All right, so the download is now done, and then you'll see right here in Windows Terminal, there's a little exe file, and it's named after the thing that I did. What do you know? So what we're going to do is I'm just going to type in /virtiowin.exe, right? Or you just use, like in other Unix terminals, you can use tab, they've autocomplete, hit enter. Give it a moment. And then boom, it'll launch. Welcome to the VirtWin guest tool setup. I agree to the GNU license. It's in the Apache license. These are far superior licenses to Microsoft's end-of-user license agreement. All right. blah, 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 blah. Click next. Got to download .NET because this is Microsoft. And then they'll actually download here all sorts of other features to improve the usage of your Windows virtual machine. And it's just gonna go and install it. You actually just heard like a device just got ejected there, right? And that's because it's actually there. So click done, and you'll already notice that the experience of me moving my mouse around is actually way smoother, right? You can see it's actually installing all this other stuff in here too. But you'll notice too, when I move my mouse, right, it has that same seamless movement. Like, so you see how I move my cursor up here, the window opens, right? But when I move remember before when I had to do Control-Alt-G just to remove my mouse out of the thing, notice now when I move my mouse, my real cursor gets moves away and becomes disconnected, and it's really cool, right? And that's pretty much all you have to do. Just make sure you keep the that thing up to date. Generally, just check. I would probably check around every Patch Tuesday. And speaking of Patch Tuesday, when you first install Windows 11, right? The thing you always need to do is you always need to just go to Windows Update and then just mash the update button and accept every single update you possibly can, because I can guarantee you that you're gonna be here for like 2 hours trying to download updates. So make sure you have all of your updates, and download the latest feature pack update while you're at it, because these take a million years and your computer is gonna have to reboot like 7 times just to get all of this done. So while Windows Update's running, let's tackle the last and final thing, right? So if you go to System here, the System tab, and the Settings menu. So in Windows, right? If you right click, go to Start menu, it's Settings, but it's also if you right click on here, click Settings, you'll get there. But then if you go here where it says Display, right? And remember, this is part of the benefits of the driver, right? We're actually going to increase the resolution of this thing. Right now, it's in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and I am a loser who has a widescreen display. I can't stand this, right? So we're just going to change it to 1080p. Boom, look at that. Now I get the full Windows 11 screen that takes up my full screen and is nice, all right? So, and that's how you install Windows 11 in virt-manager. Remember, what you have to do is we did all that stuff with the virtual virt-manager just to get it going, right? And then what we did was we ran a curl. What we did was once we installed everything and got through the installation process, we ran a curl command, and running this curl command actually downloads for us the latest installer for all the guest tools. And then we ran Windows Update to make sure that our computer is fully up to date and our system is raring and ready to go. So leave a comment down below if you want to see more Windows tutorials. I know many people are forced to use Windows. If you're forced to use Windows, I'm sorry. Why don't you, while you're here, why don't you go click that like button? Click that like button. If you don't click the like button, Panos Panay is going to come and haunt you in your sleep by telling you stories about his family. And then, while you're at it, why don't you also subscribe? Subscribe, or else a Windows update is going to brick your computer. All right. What? You're not using Windows? Oh, I guess you should just subscribe anyway. All right. See you all later. Hope you learned something.